The policies I would implement to create more equity and stability for renters. First up, rent caps. There is absolutely no reason why you should just be able to, from year to year, increase the price of someone's rent without making either commensurate upgrades to justify that rent or in some way having to prove that you need to raise the rent, right? No. So you should either have, so if you want to be able, if a property, you're renting for $2,000, if you want to bump that up to $2,300, okay, great. You have to go through a review board to show why you need to increase by $300, what upgrades you've made to justify that cost. It should not just be at an owner's whim. You should have to prove why. There should be specific caps set to limit how much you can increase rent by, and or some sort of review board that you have to justify that decision to.
Here's the deal. In what world is it okay for you to be able to dictate to me how I can control my asset so that you can live the way you want to live? That's my first rebuttal to what she's saying. And let's say that these rules that she's citing is implemented, which would cause me as a landlord to give an excuse. Well, a lot of landlords have excuses, and the number one excuse is taxes and insurance in a lot of markets. Those costs are going to be passed to those of you that are renting. It's just facts. It may not all be at one time, but it's going to roll downhill. You know what they say about the stuff that rolls downhill. So if I have to justify why I'm raising the rent so that you can live how you want to live and dictate how I'm going to spend my money, well, then I think you as a renter should be responsible or obligated to justify why you haven't gotten up and increased your productivity. Now, I can already hear it, right? All of those of you that agree with her are going to be offended. Well, I never either. How can you dictate to me how much income I can make? Well, what I want to know from you is, why are you sitting on your, well, no, don't let me say that. Why aren't you going beyond the minimum wage, minimum wherever you are? And so if I have to do that, well, then you have to justify why you can't pay anymore. And it can't be all of these fake disabilities that you want to come up with because you're lazy. Now, might not be everybody, and it's not everybody, but able-bodied people that sit around and come up with TikTok reasons to prevent folks from excelling how they want to excel get up under my skin. They really do. So again, not to ramble, before we go further, just to reiterate, if I have to justify to you why the increase in the rental payments are going to happen, you have to justify why you can't pay them. We need to see job applications. We need to see your work history. Have you been on TikTok? And are you being subsidized already, taking money from the truly elderly, those that are really disabled? So that's my counter to her first rule. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section. Yeah, let's continue. This is going to be fun.
Longer notice periods for sales. So if you want to sell a property that you own and you have tenants, okay, that's great, fine. You have to give them 6 months or a year notice. No more of this, oh, we're going to sell the house in 2 months bullshit. No more of that. And if you want a shorter notice period, you can have that. But what you have to do is pay a penalty or a fine to either the city or the tenant themselves. So you can have that flexibility, but it's going to cost you, I don't know, a couple of months rent, right? No, like give it. So, and I think that a policy like this can help to reduce some of that volatility that renters face, as particularly when owners decide to sell at the last minute.
Okay, man, it gets better. Now I have to be penalized or give you a certain runway to how long I have to notify you before I want to sell my stuff. Okay, just listen to the arrogance, in my opinion, well, this is what I want you to do, tenant. I want you to be held responsible for all of the things that you are derelict in maintaining the property. So that if I give you this runway to let you know I'm moving, this is what I mean. You're going to assure that this property is in turnkey condition, so that when I give you this runway for you to find another person to extort, I'm being messy. When I give you this runway for you to move somewhere else, then when you leave my house that you've destroyed, I don't have to keep it off the market a certain period of time to get it ready because you took care of that. It's just like it was when you moved in. Now, I'm assuming this is for the landlords that the property was in great shape and you maintained it throughout the lease agreement. That's what the assumption, because there are some folks that have properties that do not maintain them. I'll give her that. But the reason I'm so passionate about what I'm speaking of, because I'm a landlord, and my experience has been this: people like this tear stuff up, and it's always everybody else's problem, and it's not any fault of their own. And so this is why they have this arrogance, in my opinion. But if you're a landlord who is derelict in that you don't take care of your property, I'm with her. But watch this before I move forward and get to her next point. A lot of times the reason the properties just get sold like that without any notice is because of these rules that you guys are talking about, rent caps. Because see, the deal is this: it's a business, which you fail to realize. And as a business owner, I am not responsible for you to live your best life. It's a transaction. I'm offering shelter, you're paying the rent. If I decide to increase the rent, that's my prerogative. You also have the option to buy your own home or get into the rental business yourself. That's your prerogative. But if I'm going to be beholden and put caps on when my costs are rising, then I might leave and I have to sell quickly. So consider that, renters, all of you out here that think someone's supposed to make sure you living like you want to live. Think about the unintended consequences that some of these rules may bring about. Let's continue.
More renter protections and avenues for actually enforcing those protections as they're written on the books, right? Because even in a place like Minneapolis, which has like pretty decent like renter protections, it's still shitty, right? It's still very shitty, and it's often hard to like enforce these things, and right, and things can take a long time. And so like I think creating just like a stronger ecosystem of like both laws on the books and actually like mechanisms to enforce those laws can go a long way in ensuring that renters' voices are being heard and respected, particularly when they're in situations in which they're being harmed by their landlord. And finally, creating more avenues and protections for tenants' unions. Now, but admittedly, this is like about like, folks organizing like in their buildings or on their block or like, against the landlord. So you like want to provide people the like flexibility and autonomy to do that. But like, yeah, just like strengthening again the ecosystem of like protections that renters have, and like part of how that happens is by putting people in community and like working in collective action. And so like I think tenants unions are an amazing way to do that.
Yeah, guys, a lot of extortion going on out here in these streets. Now she wants a union for tenants. Crazy work, blows my mind. But as I said, trying to look at this from a different lens. But the more I watch these videos, a lot of you guys are delusional. So not going to spend a lot of time talking to that crew, in my opinion. Let me talk to those of you that want to become a homeowner and think that rent controls are going to be a solution for you. I want to make that case, and then you guys make your decision, as I know you will. My name is Robert. For those of you that don't know me, 20 plus years helping people secure residential real estate, 1 to 4 units. And I do so by simplifying the home loan process. Leg up. All right, guys. Rent controls. For those of you that might not know, the simple explanation of a rent control is this. Hey, you as a owner, landlord, You can only increase rents at a certain percentage on a yearly basis. And not to bore you guys, a lot of these states that I'm going to show you, and these aren't some of them, let me go down to the beginning, but there's a lot of states and cities that have strong rent controls currently. And what I want you guys to do is just do your own research recently at the time of this video and look at the state of the economy, the tax situation in these places that we're going to go over. And you tell me if rent controls is what's needed. Here are some of the states and cities that have strong rental controls in place. So New York City, New York, California, a lot of cities in California, Los Angeles list, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Santa Monica, DC, Seattle. So for you as a potential tenant, it makes you feel good because rent doesn't go up abruptly. It goes up measured, and you can understand why. And it's going to feel safe to you when you're in those places. But I would like to say to you this: those things or these conditions will cause you to stay in that place for a longer period of time. And as a result of that, your muscle that you need to continue to at least beat inflation is going to atrophy because you get comfortable. We've all been there. We all have gotten comfortable in some aspect of our lives, and you got to stay hungry. And that's just the name of the game, guys. If you want to go to another country, you got a lot of us folks fleeing and going elsewhere and taking the dollar with you, right? Well, you got to do your research on that as well, because that's going to end up biting a lot of you in the behind. Also, when those places say, we got people here that are from here that we can't take care of. Recent events, just look at Mexico. The folks were lamenting about expats going down there, increasing the rent, the cost of living, because you're coming in with a stronger currency. At the end of the day, I know you don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. That's why I'm trying to go to heaven. That's why I try to keep the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of my ability, because when my faith and belief of what's coming, we ain't gonna have this situation. But here, the current situation that we in, you got to occupy, man, until he returns. And so you got to render unto Caesar's what Caesar's, and you have to produce. So because of these rent controls, and you're living in these places, a lot of times places where you can't afford to live, it's just what it is. There's things that I can't afford. You don't get offended. It's facts. And so your family may have been here for generations, but nobody bought a home or anything of that nature. And all of these subsidies and interruptions in the system has gotten you to believe that's what it takes to live. And that's not true. Your rent goes up slowly. You feel safe. You stay long term. Those production muscles atrophy because you get comfortable. And then what happens over time, truthfully, is there's less inventory. Because as an investor, someone that's looking to make a profit and grow the asset if it's commercial, which is blasphemy to a lot of you guys that don't want to produce, then you say, well, you know what? Well, everybody can't do this and everybody can't do. There's a million excuses. And I don't go with excuses a lot unless they're folks that are truly disabled or elder, so on and so forth, because I don't come from a place where nobody gave me nothing. It's just been hard work, head down, dedication, living beneath my means, and getting somewhere and sitting down. So I don't want to hear all that. But for the most part, it's gonna cause less inventory because those folks that are trying to make a profit, they're gonna leave. And if that's not what's happening in these places, y'all correct me. That's why the young lady was saying you need some more rules. We don't need no more rules. A lot of y'all need to get up, get out, and get some. That's the rule that's not being implemented: productivity. At whatever level you're at. The second rule that's not being implemented, in my opinion, is you're living above your means. Some of you got to move around. You got to get in where you fit in. Nobody wants to hear that. Let's continue. So then you have less inventory, okay? Because the investors leave. The landlords, the ones that you guys think are the devil, because the government gives incentives to anybody here in these United States. So you got to hear the opportunity that wants to provide housing for folks. But a lot of you guys think that it's your birthright for you to live in Santa Monica. Santa Monica, real nice. Really, really nice. A lot of places on the West Coast, nice. But you expect someone to subsidize that. No, you got to get it how you live. If you want to live out there, you got to make sure you putting the yeah with the yeah. Can you do it? Everybody wants to, but can you? Let me lower my voice. Now, here are some of the states. You know what? I'm tripping. Let me go over here. This is what I was showing you guys. Okay. So strong rental controls, New York City, California. I was mentioning Santa Monica, DC, Washington, Seattle. So again, you feel like when the rent goes up slowly, you feel safe, but you end up staying longer term. You don't produce as much, in my opinion. Less inventory is a result of these rent caps because the investors are going to leave. That's what I was showing you when I was going off there, right? Now, there are no rent controls in states like Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Texas, North Carolina. Go look at the economies and things of that nature. Not saying that they're all perfect, but you have a lot of people gravitating to those areas. You got to ask yourself why. When you deal in an area that doesn't have rent control, here's what can happen. Rents can increase or jump rapidly. They don't have any cap. And so to a lot of people, that seems like danger, stranger danger. No, but it's really not. In these states where there's no rental caps, see, you have to live where you can afford to live. No one is subsidizing you, and you're not gangstering them into you living in Santa Monica when you have San Antonio income. So no rent controls makes you as a renter realize where you can actually live. Although the rents can increase significantly and rapidly, what happens is this. Because there's no rent caps, you have more homes, more inventory, more investors that have left those places where they can't make a profit, where the capital isn't treated favorably. And I want to say again, that those same rules, that same capital, that same process can be done by you, but it requires some work. You see, it requires you understanding that everybody, it's not always the boogeyman. A lot of times it's you, the man in the mirror, as Mike would say, or the woman in the mirror. So because of these things, you have more competition, and the market, because of these factors, help keep the prices at the market rate. That's how it works. In fact, in a lot of these places, like in Texas, for sure, a lot in Texas, during the pandemic, there was a lot of inventory that was put online, a lot of apartments and things of that nature, since we're talking about renting. And so a lot of people now have more inventory and choices to choose from for A-class apartment living. And if your income is commensurate, the 3 times or whatever the requirement is, you have a lot to choose from, and you can get in at a very good price at this point because there's a lot of competition. You see what I'm saying? Here's the deal. The open market, capitalism, when done right, when is it done? When you don't have all these inputs from the government that is inefficient. It just is. You need some government to keep folks honest. That's true, because there's line steppers everywhere. But all these rules to take from one to give to another because you don't want to work, that ain't working no more. It's dead. So the open market, supply and demand, keep prices in check. Facts. And ultimately, those of you that may be renting now have a better opportunity, in my opinion, to own, control a home if that's what you want to do, because there's more inventory available. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I vehemently disagree with all of these rules and rent caps, and it's not going to yield what you guys think it's going to yield. Do some research and understand that You got to get up, get out, and get something. Translation, you have to be productive and control as much as you can control. Because if you continue to pass on the responsibilities, what responsibilities of maintenance and paying the cost for the money that you want, interest, and not having a budget and a plan of action for you and your family, man, I said it before, rent gonna be $3,000. And if you don't want to stay in a place where you have to feel uncomfortable, you better get on it. You better get on it. So if you watch this video and you said, you know what, Robert, it makes sense, I'd like to move forward. What's the next step? Schedule a consultation. The link is either in the top pinned comment, but for sure in the description of this video. Let's have a conversation. Let me listen to what it is that you're trying to do. And if there's a fit, we can move forward. For those of you that are not ready, check out these 2 videos here. Continue educating yourself until the time you feel comfortable to reach out. Guys, let's be good to one another. Let grace abound. And for sure, y'all stay blessed. Indeed.